Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I recently showed this as a new acquisition. Not long ago, I mentioned that I don't want to be buying a lot of books between now and the new year. Well, I think I am extending that, in spite of which I got this. To excuse myself, this book has been in my mind for a long time. I saw it probably 3 or so years ago on the BookTube channel of Brunzo. And it's come up here or there subsequently, and it's supposed to be pretty definitive, possibly dated in some aspects. But I'm intrigued by both parcels of this. Number one, I'm just totally ignorant, but number two, when I was in high school, I've said that our public school system in the suburb I was raised in did not teach any history except for that of the United States. The one sole exception was a history class I had in high school, and that teacher, for some reason unknown to me, most of the class was World War II, watching World War II movies and documentaries. But for some reason, he included a chapter or a module. I'm not sure what would be the right word. A session pertaining to the conquistadores, and each student was assigned a conquistador and given the assignment of writing a big report about it. And of course, I don't remember any of the other reports that other students did, but I just fortuitously happened to have been assigned Pizarro and Peru. And God knows how I found the information. I would guess that I went to an encyclopedia or something. I was incapable of processing any of the information, to be sure. I mean, even years later when I had a class on Marxism, communism in college, I was incapable of processing that information. God knows if I would be today. But I'm very glad that I had that little introduction. As I say, we didn't study Europe, we didn't study antiquity. And so this little piece of Pizarro in Peru stood out. And I would bet that the presentation of the material in that time was much more positive. I mean, it probably looked at the conquistadores in their positive aspect, if there is such a thing. I have this cat here, and it's really bothering my nose. I unfortunately am allergic to cats and dogs and dust. And she has really bad fur. Not every cat is equal. So I would like to attack this. I would like to learn about the conquest of Mexico. That's been a more commonly in the background bit of information. We, of course, are pretty close to Mexico. I've spent time in Mexico, gone to Mexico City, seen the ruins and so forth. But just in general, as a cultural component, I think we all know a lot more about the conquest of Mexico. But even so, I would like to really get the lowdown, the history on it, and then I would like to find out about Peru as well with new adult eyes. Now, I've said that I don't really want to be buying new books, and this latest hiatus in my reading, I mean, I've taken, it's almost a solid month off, and if I add the various slowdowns before that, it's really been something of a slump. And just in the last few days, I've started back to reading Mark Edward Lewis. I had gotten to page 28. Now I'm well, what am I at? Maybe not 100 yet, but so now I'm at, well, 84. So I've made some progress. And I'm starting to get into it again. And reading is hard because I tend to get tired a lot. And so my ability to just focus is impeded somewhat by that. But I'm starting to realize in the coming years, we can expect to have shocks deriving from the political situation in this country, probably horrible shocks. I mean, at the end of his first presidency, Donald Trump caused the deaths of untold numbers of people. I'm sure it's been calculated by now, by pretending that COVID-19 was a farce invented by the Democratic Party. He actually said that and took no steps, told people to take no precautions, and in fact incited people to commit violence against Asians. So that was his handling of that crisis. And so we can expect, however many people died directly because of his non-handling of the COVID crisis, I would bet we're going to have more deaths from some kind of, we could have another pandemic of sorts. The window is not closed on that. The window is not closed on some sort of resurgence of COVID, coronavirus, but any number of things could happen. We just don't know, some sort of famine. I mean, with all of this climate-related disaster going on, the beehives are being washed out and so forth. Enough beehives wash out and, well, we won't be eating too much, I guess. So recognizing that time is limited, I'm thinking I have to really prioritize my reading a little bit. And so what I want to do in the coming year is probably do less fiction reading because that is not a priority for me. I'm going to, the one book for sure that I know I want to tackle is The Dream of Red Mansions. It's an epic Chinese novel, and I would like to read that. I have a couple of others that I would like to read at some point, but with the idea of prioritizing, I would really like to focus on nonfiction books that I've had sitting around the house. So I am going to try to finish this, or start again, actually. I had been reading this 8 years ago and then set it aside and just forgot about it. So I'm going to start from the top and read it again. And I hope to read that during the course of this year. But I was on Facebook, and a Facebook friend had a long post about Moses Finley, and some commenter mentioned the book by E.R. Dodds, The Greeks and the Irrational, which is a book Moses Finley mentioned occasionally. And I have it, and I don't think I've read it straight through. I've read little bits and pieces out of it. And I thought, well, maybe I should try to slide this into my year-end reading. I will be on the fence about that. It really depends on how much progress I make with these other books. I do want to finish with Huckleberry Finn, and I have another book about the history of the United States by Henry Adams, written by Gary Wills. And so I want to read those. If I could squeeze in the Greeks and the Irrational, I would love to. Just by glancing at it, it looks like a pretty easy read. And the and should not be capitalized here, or the second the, I think. Goodness knows, how could they have made that kind of an error back then? But it would be nice to do, and then I can just think into my cabinets or shelves of a variety of books that have been sitting there for some years, that I would just like to try knocking out if I could. I mean, not that it would be an easy thing to do, but I'm thinking about books that I have, sort of doing a toned down version of the Read What You Own challenge, but not prohibiting myself from buying a new book, but keeping with the spirit of the movement across BookTube of reading what you own. I just think in general, every time I've read a book that's been on my shelf for a long time, and all of a sudden I've read something that has sat there for 20 years or whatever, I've felt pretty good about it. And I have no shortage of titles like that. In some cases, like the Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, I've grown to have second thoughts about it. I'm not so sure that it's that important to me anymore, it being a book of economics. But I want to think hard about it. So I just thought that I would show you this book. It's really something I wanted to talk about. And let me read you the beginning of it. I know I've read this because it is so familiar to me. This is, the initial chapter is titled Agamemnon's Apology, and it starts, some years ago, I was in the British Museum looking at the Parthenon sculptures when a young man came up to me and said with a worried air, "I know it's an awful thing to confess, but this Greek stuff doesn't move me one bit." I said that was very interesting. Could he define at all the reasons for his lack of response? He reflected for a minute or two. Then he said, "Well, it's also terribly rational, if you know what I mean." I thought I did know. The young man was only saying what has been said more articulately by Roger Fry and others. To a generation whose sensibilities have been trained on African and Aztec art and on the work of such men as Modigliani and Henry Moore, the art of the Greeks and Greek culture in general is apt to appear lacking in the awareness of mystery and in the ability to penetrate to the deeper, less conscious levels of human experience. This fragment of conversation stuck in my head and set me thinking. Were the Greeks, in fact, quite so blind to the importance of non-rational factors in man's experience and behavior, as is commonly assumed both by their apologists and by their critics? That is the question out of which this book grew. Of course, I think subsequent to this book, that assumption is no longer held. But and ancient Greece is not particularly an area which I care to devote a lot of focus to. But since I've had this book, and it's been in my mind as long as I've been reading M.I. Finley, it's another book that it seems like it's really worthwhile to just knuckle down and as Roger Miller would have said, do it, do it, do it. So it's a consideration, one more to the TBR, and I will think before the year is out more concretely about what other books in my huge pile of possibilities I might want to put a special focus upon as I think of my TBR, to be read pile. So I just thought I would share that. Strangely enough, some people are interested in hearing me blather on about books that I might be thinking about reading. So I thought I would blather on a little bit tonight. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.